I went online and I just brought up the ACC football standings. And I was surprised by how far I had to scroll down. There are now 17 teams in the ACC. This is the first year with 17 teams in the ACC football conference. And numbers 16 and 17 are UNC and NC State.
Bruh.
I mean, if you wanted to get clever, you could. And you could say things like, they're the lowest ranked teams this far into a season in ACC history. Again, it's clever. It's like, LSU's playing Clemson and you pick the Tigers. Like it's a little bit of a turn of logic. But right now, the 16th and 17th teams in the ACC standings are UNC and NC State. In the interest of moving on, which team is most likely to turn it around? Which of those two is most likely to not spend their season in the dungeon in the conference for its entirety? Both defenses are struggling. Both offenses are struggling for different reasons. Which team is most likely to turn it around? I think it's UNC. UNC, they at least have one element that they can be ridiculously confident in. Their offense has one element that is working, and that is a good place to start. Omarion Hampton is averaging 127 yards per game. That right there is something that even good teams don't have to lean on. The only time he didn't reach 100-plus yards in a game was the Charlotte game. He didn't play in the second half, and he finished just a handful of yards short.
He didn't even play like the last 5 minutes of the second quarter.
And
I was there.
Every game I wanted to watch him play more. It was a big bummer from that point on. Every other game he's reached at least 100. In all three losses, he reached 100-plus yards, and in the three losses combined, averaged just under 5 yards per carry. The guy is good, and you can start there. When they go back to the drawing board, right, I'm imagining like an old-school chalkboard, they don't have to erase everything. They erase everything and then go around the running game and then erase everything else. That is more than can be said for a lot of these teams that find themselves at or near the bottom of their conference. Mac Brown will admit, as you're going to hear here in a second, their head coach, that they are still trying to find themselves offensively. I would argue you got a really, really, really nice building block of an identity. Here's Mac Brown.
You've got a completely new offensive line, and you've got a quarterback that's as inexperienced as Jacoby. You're really trying to figure out who you are. And by 6 games, he didn't even play in the first one. He played a little bit in the second one, so he's 4 games into this. And we are getting better. We had a 19-play drive, but we're not having the big plays, and that's because we overthrow a touchdown. We drop a touchdown pass, and right now we don't have the margin of error to do that. We've got to make those plays. So our biggest takeaway from the weekend was make 5 of those 10 plays that are out there, and we win the game.
Here's the deal. By the way, I just want to bring up that 19-play drive that he referenced. They did have a 19-play drive. It did take 9 minutes. It did start in the first quarter, and it did end on a turnover on downs. But these are the players that ended with the ball in their hands on that 19-play drive. First play, incomplete. Then Omarion Hampton, Copenhaver, Omarion Hampton, Jones, Omarion Hampton, Davion Goss, who was in the game in replacement of Omarion Hampton, incomplete, Goss. The 19-play drive was Omarion Hampton. There was a couple of sprinkled in. The pass to Jones specifically picked up some chunk yardage. But Omarion Hampton, that's what they can build off of. What does NC State have to build off of? Right, because this whole thing started with the question of the 16th and 17th teams in the ACC football standings, who's most likely to turn it around, UNC or NC State? And what does NC State have to build off of? Their pass game is confusing. I like the pass catchers, but the production isn't there. The defense is struggling, as is UNC's. The run game has been absent. That's what the difference is. I think if they have a building block, it's the production of Justin Joly, their tight end, catching the ball. He's somebody that I see rising up draft boards, but he averages 3 catches per game. It's not a big enough building block. You have to do a balancing act, right? It's not big enough volume to build an offense around that. Now, maybe part of what they have to do to bounce back would be to get him more volume, possibly. If he can keep his same efficiency at a higher volume of targets and catches, that'd be great. But that's one step back from where UNC is. UNC knows the thing they can depend on is good. It will sustain volume. It will not lack efficiency. It is Omarion Hampton. Dave Doeren, the head coach of NC State, evaluates the Wolfpack run game as it stands right now.
I would say early on it was pretty bad, and it got better. Thought it got quite a bit better against Clemson. NIU, not great. I think we had some good runs in that game, but we didn't turn the ball over, and that was a physical front. Had some good runs in this game. I think if you watch the game, how our game plan was, there was a lot of plays that were runs where we threw the football. And so we took the numbers, took the leverage, I guess you'd say. Had we handed off some of those, there could have been some pretty explosive runs if you look at how the box was on some of those plays. So there are improvements in some ways. Am I happy with it? No.
Am I happy with it? No. I can see why you wouldn't be. Here's the fact of the matter. Mm-hmm. Both teams have an uphill climb from here.
Oh, yeah.
Both teams have glaring weaknesses that are not easy to fix at this point. In a lot of ways, college football is more difficult than professional football even, because you can't go sign a free agent. You can't cut a guy and mix it up. You can't do that. So you have to find a way with what you have on your roster, and both of these teams up to this point have left a lot to be desired. If one of them is going to turn it around, I'm going to bet on the team that has who I consider, and I said this preseason, and I don't think I've seen a lot of reasons to go back on it, the regardless of position, best football player in the ACC. I think that's Omarion Hampton. Now, obviously, Cam Ward down there with the Miami Hurricanes is going to get some love, but I think a lot of that is position and value.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that is quarterbacks are inherently more valuable, which is fine. I'm good with that.
That's what it is.
You could argue that same fact is why UNC and NC State are where they are, but I'm going to bet on the team that can take their inexperienced quarterback, because they both have inexperienced quarterbacks now. Looks like it's going to be C.J. Bailey for State and Jacoby Criswell for UNC the rest of the way. If I have an inexperienced quarterback, I like the one that can turn and hand it to Omarion Hampton. But make no mistake about it, this is picking the lesser of two bads. Right, this is not saying, UNC set up perfectly. It's saying out of these two options that we've been provided, this is the way I would lean. 127 yards per game is pretty good.
Yeah, last time I checked, unless you're that guy from Boise State.
Boise State, well, yes. He said, wait, you took you that many carries to get to 127 yards per game? I do that on 3 touches. That's Ashton Genty, by the way. I presume he has to be the Heisman betting favorite at this point.
I think he actually is.
I still think it's Travis Hunter because he's doing the Shohei thing and playing both ways. But Genty, if you want to give it to him, I'm not going to complain about that. And actually, Omarion Hampton's on a team that's going to hold him back. But if he gave you a couple 200-yard games down the stretch, his stats will add up to just about anyone outside of Genty's.